Commander Jake Morrison walked across the metal floor of the ship's control room. His heavy boots made soft sounds on the surface as he moved toward the large screen that showed the stars outside. The UES Vengeance was one of the biggest ships in the human fleet, and Jake had been its commander for 3 years now. He stopped in front of the main display and looked at the message that had changed everything. The alien words glowed green on the black screen, translated into English by the ship's computer. Jake had read these words hundreds of times in the past 3 months, but they still made his heart beat faster. "Sir, you wanted to see me?" Captain Lisa Rodriguez entered the control room. She was the ship's expert on talking to aliens, even though humans had never actually met any before this message arrived. Jake pointed at the screen. "Read it again, Lisa. Tell me what you think." Lisa moved closer to the display and read the words out loud. "To the warriors of Earth, our people face total destruction. The enemy comes with ships beyond counting. Billions will die if you do not help us. We beg you to send your greatest fleet. Time grows short. The Kalari Federation calls for your aid." She finished reading and looked at Jake. "It's pretty clear, sir. They need our help badly." Jake nodded slowly. When the message first arrived, it had caused panic among the leaders of Earth. Aliens were real, and they were asking for help. The message had come from a place called the Kalari Federation, somewhere far away among the stars. "What do you think about the translation?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her computer pad. "The language program says it's correct. The alien's computer talked to our computer, and this is what it said. The words are simple enough." Jake walked to another screen that showed a map of space. Red dots marked where the human fleet was now, and a blue dot showed where the Kalari Federation was located. It would take 2 months to get there, even with the fastest ships. "The enemy comes with ships beyond counting," Jake said again. "That sounds like a huge invasion force." "Yes, sir. And they said billions will die. That means their whole civilization might be destroyed." Jake remembered the meeting he had attended on Earth 1 month ago. Admiral Paul Carter had called together all the top commanders to discuss the alien message. The room had been full of serious faces and worried voices. "We can't ignore this," the Admiral had said. "If aliens are real, and they're asking for our help, we have to respond. This could be our first contact with other intelligent life in the universe." Some commanders had worried it might be a trap. Others thought the message might be fake. But most agreed that they couldn't take the chance. If the aliens were telling the truth, and if humans didn't help, an entire civilization might die. "What kind of help do you think they want?" General Karen Thompson had asked. "They said, 'Send your greatest fleet,'" Admiral Carter replied. "That sounds like they want military help. They're fighting a war and losing." Jake had raised his hand. "Sir, what if we send help and it's not enough? What if this enemy is stronger than us too?" The Admiral had been quiet for a moment. "Then we'll face that problem when we get there. But we can't let fear stop us from doing what's right." Now, 3 months later, Jake was part of the largest fleet humans had ever assembled. The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet had 12 of the biggest warships ever built. Each one was over 2 miles long and carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Along with them came 47 smaller attack ships, 6 ships that carried fighter planes, and 200,000 soldiers. "Sir," Lisa's voice brought Jake back to the present. "Sorry, I was thinking about the briefing," Jake said. "Do we know anything more about this enemy the aliens are fighting?" Lisa checked her computer again. "Not much. The aliens sent a few more messages after the first one, but they were all short. They kept saying they needed help fast, and that the enemy was getting stronger." Jake looked at the latest message from the aliens. It had arrived just 2 days ago. "Human fleet, please. Hurry, enemy grows bolder, our defenses weaken. Cannot hold much longer. Kalari people trust in your strength." "They sound desperate," Jake said. Yes, sir, and scared. Jake understood why. The aliens had somehow learned about humans and decided to ask for help. They must have studied human military power and thought it was strong enough to make a difference. But Jake wondered if they really understood what they were asking for. The human fleet was not just big. It was designed for total war. Every ship carried weapons that could break planets apart. The soldiers were trained to fight in the most dangerous places in the universe. Humans had learned to be warriors because Earth was a dangerous world where only the strong survived. Captain Rodriguez, Jake said, what do you think the aliens expect from us? Lisa thought for a moment. Based on their messages, I think they expect us to arrive and help them fight off the invasion. Maybe they think we'll add our ships to their fleet and help them win the war. And what are we actually bringing them? Lisa looked at the display, showing the human fleet. Ship after ship stretched across space, more firepower than had ever been gathered in one place. We're bringing them enough force to conquer a galaxy, sir. Jake smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. Exactly. I wonder if they know that. The truth was that humans had no idea how to fight a small war. On Earth, when countries fought, they used everything they had. When humans decided to fight, they fought to win completely and quickly. The idea of holding back or using just a little force was not how humans thought about war. Sir, incoming message from Admiral Carter, the communications officer called. Out, put it on screen, Jake ordered. Admiral Carter's face appeared on the display. He looked tired but determined. All ships, this is Admiral Carter. We'll reach the Kalari system in 6 days. I want everyone ready for immediate combat. We don't know what we're flying into, but we're going to hit the enemy with everything we have. The Admiral paused and looked directly at the camera. Remember, an entire alien civilization is counting on us. This is humanity's first chance to show the galaxy who we are. Let's make sure we do it right. The message ended, and the control room was quiet for a moment. Captain Rodriguez, Jake said, send a message to the Kalari. Tell them we're almost there. What should I say, sir? Jake thought about it. Tell them the human fleet is 6 days away. Tell them to hold on a little longer. And tell them that when we arrive, their war will be over. Lisa nodded and began typing the message. Jake hoped the aliens would understand that he meant their war would be over, because humans would win it for them. He had a feeling that the Kalari Federation was about to learn something very important about the species they had asked for help. Humans didn't just fight wars. They ended them. As the UE's vengeance moved through space toward the alien world. Jake wondered what would happen when two very different ideas of warfare met for the first time. The aliens had asked for help, and help was coming. But it was coming in a way that no one in the galaxy was prepared for. The countdown had begun. Captain Steve Hayes stood on the bridge of the U-East Pioneer as his ship dropped out of hyperspace. The view screen showed the Kalari star system for the first time, and Steve felt his breath catch in his throat. He was looking at an alien solar system, something no human had ever seen before. Sir, we're getting readings from the system, Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster said from her station. She was the fleet's diplomatic officer, trained to handle first contact with alien species. There are lots of ships moving around, but they don't look like they're fighting. Steve moved closer to the display. The Kalari homeworld was a blue and green planet, much like Earth. Around it, he could see space stations and what looked like normal traffic. Ships moved in orderly patterns, going about their business. It looked peaceful. Where's the invasion fleet? Steve asked. I'm not seeing any large military formation, sir, the sensor officer reported. The biggest ships I can detect are maybe half the size of our destroyers, Steve frowned. According to the alien messages, this system should be under attack by an overwhelming enemy force. There should be battles happening, explosions, desperate fighting. Instead, everything looked calm and normal. "Captain, we're being contacted by a Kalari ship," Amy said. "They want to talk." "Put them through." Steve ordered. The view screen changed to show the inside of an alien ship. Steve found himself looking at his first alien being. The Kalari looked almost human, but with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. The alien wore what looked like a formal uniform with bright colors. "Greetings, humans," the alien said in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Zefki of the Kalari Federation. We are so grateful that you have come to help us." Steve had practiced this moment many times, but actually seeing and talking to an alien still felt strange. "Ambassador Zefki, I am Captain Steve Hayes of the human fleet. We received your distress call and came as quickly as we could." The alien smiled, showing small white teeth. "Your arrival is most welcome. We have prepared a meeting place where we can discuss the situation properly. Ambassador, before we meet, can you tell me where the enemy fleet is? We expected to find a battle happening." Zefki looked confused for a moment. "The enemy fleet? Oh, you mean the Vorthik ships. They are near the third planet in our system, but there is no battle happening right now. They have been staying in that area for several months." Steve felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "Several months? How many enemy ships are there?" "I believe there are 12 Vorthik vessels," Zefki replied. "Possibly 15 now. They have been joined by a few more recently." Steve looked at Amy, who was staring at the screen with wide eyes. 12 ships. The aliens had called for help against 12 ships. The human fleet had brought enough firepower to destroy entire solar systems, and the enemy force was 12 ships. "Ambassador," Steve said carefully, "in your messages you said that billions of lives were at risk. Can you explain what you meant?" Zefki nodded seriously. "Yes, this is very concerning. The Vorthik have disrupted some of our trade routes. If this continues, it could affect the economy of several worlds. The cost to our civilization could be enormous." Amy put her hand over her mouth to stop herself from making a sound. Steve felt like he was in a bad dream. The aliens had called for military help because their trade routes were being disrupted. They had sent messages talking about total destruction and billions of deaths because they were worried about economic problems. "I see," Steve said, trying to keep his voice calm. "And what kind of help were you expecting from us?" "We hoped you might send a few ships to help us negotiate with the Vorthik," Zefki explained. "Perhaps 50 or 100 of your vessels, along with some soldiers to show that we are serious about protecting our interests." Steve closed his eyes for a moment. The aliens had wanted 50 ships. The humans had brought over 200, along with enough weapons to sterilize planets and 200,000 soldiers trained for total war. "Ambassador Zefki," Steve said, "I think there may have been some misunderstanding in our communications. How many human ships were you expecting?" "Based on our analysis of your military structure, we calculated that you might send 1 or 2 of your large vessels, along with appropriate support ships. We understand that asking for help from another species is a significant request." Amy was now typing furiously on her computer, probably sending messages back to Admiral Carter. Steve knew that every commander in the fleet was going to have to know about this as soon as possible. "Ambassador, I need to ask you something important," Steve said. "What did you think when you detected our fleet arriving in your system?" Zefki's expression changed. For the first time, he looked worried. "We detected a very large energy signature when you arrived. Our sensors showed more ships than we expected. How many vessels did you bring?" Steve took a deep breath. "We brought approximately 260 ships, including 12 dreadnoughts and 6 carrier groups." The alien's face went pale, which was impressive since his skin was already blue. 260 ships? For our small problem with the Vorthik? "Ambassador, we also brought 200,000 soldiers." Zefki sat down heavily in his chair. 200,000 soldiers. "Captain Hayes, I think there has been a terrible mistake in our communications. I'm beginning to think so too, Steve said. Amy stepped forward. Ambassador Zefki, when your people sent the message asking for help, what exactly did you mean by total destruction and billions will die? Zefki looked embarrassed. Those were standard phrases used in formal diplomatic requests. We meant that the economic impact could eventually affect billions of our people if the trade disruption continued for many years. And when you said the enemy comes with ships beyond counting, we meant that 12 ships seemed like a lot for a minor border dispute, Zefki admitted. In our experience, conflicts usually involve 3 or 4 ships at most. Steve felt a headache coming on. The aliens lived in a galaxy where major conflicts involved 3 or 4 ships. They thought 12 ships was an overwhelming force. They had no idea what real warfare looked like. Ambassador, Amy said gently, I think you should know that humans interpreted your message as a request for maximum military response to an extinction-level threat. Extinction-level threat, Zefki repeated. But this is just a trade dispute. A trade dispute that you describe using language that humans associate with total war, Steve explained. The alien put his head in his hands. What have we done? We only wanted a small show of force to encourage negotiations. Instead, you got the entire 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, Steve said. Captain Hayes, Zefki said, looking up with frightened eyes. Your people are not going to attack our world, are they? We had no intention of deceiving you. Steve felt sorry for the alien. No, Ambassador. Humans don't attack people who ask for help. But we do need to figure out what to do about this situation. Perhaps we could meet and discuss this properly. Zefki suggested. I can arrange for our best diplomatic team to explain the situation with the Vorthek. That sounds like a good idea, Steve agreed. But first, I need to contact Admiral Carter and let him know what we've discovered. After the communication ended, Steve turned to Amy. What do you think? Amy shook her head slowly. I think we just discovered that the galaxy is a much more peaceful place than we expected. And I think the Kalari are about to learn that humans are much more warlike than they expected. This is going to be interesting, Steve said. Sir, incoming message from Admiral Carter, the communications officer announced. Put him through, Steve ordered. Admiral Carter's face appeared on the screen, and he looked confused. Captain Hayes, my sensors are showing that this system is completely peaceful. Where's the invasion fleet? Sir, Steve said, we need to talk. Admiral Paul Carter stood in the main meeting room of the UE's Vengeance, looking at the strangest gathering he had ever seen. Around the long metal table sat 12 human officers and 6 Kalari representatives. The aliens looked nervous while the humans looked confused. Ambassador Zefki sat at the far end of the table with his aide, a younger Kalari named Vexta. Both aliens kept glancing at the human officers as if they expected them to suddenly attack. The other 4 Kalari were members of their High Council, brought to help explain their situation. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Admiral Carter said slowly. You sent a distress call asking for military help against 12 enemy ships. Yes, Admiral Carter, Zefki replied. The Vorthek have been interfering with our shipping lanes for several months. We thought a show of force might encourage them to negotiate. Dr. Corinne Thompson, the fleet's expert on alien cultures, was taking notes on her computer. She had been studying the Kalari for 2 days now, trying to understand how such a big misunderstanding could happen. And when you said billions of lives were at stake, Admiral Carter continued, you meant the economic impact on your trade networks? Exactly, Vexta said. If the trade routes remain closed, it could affect the income of workers on many worlds. That impacts billions of people over time. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Murphy, who had been sent to study the enemy threat, spoke up. Ambassador, I've been analyzing the Vorthek ships. Their weapons are very weak compared to ours. One of our patrol boats could probably defeat their entire fleet." The Kalari looked at each other with worried expressions. "How powerful are your patrol boats?" Zefki asked. "They're our smallest military ships," Ben explained. "Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a city." The room went quiet. The Kalari stared at Ben as if he had said something impossible. "You have small ships that can destroy cities?" Vexta asked in a whisper. "Those are our weakest weapons," Captain Lisa Rodriguez added. "Our main warships can crack planets apart." Zefki put his hands over his face. "What kind of species are you?" Dr. Thompson leaned forward. "Ambassador, can you tell us about warfare in your part of the galaxy? How do conflicts usually work?" "Well," Zefki said, still looking shaken, "when two groups disagree, they might send a few ships to the border area. The ships stay there and send messages back and forth. Sometimes they fire warning shots to show they are serious." "Warning shots?" Admiral Carter asked. Double quotes, "Yes, they shoot at empty space near the other ships. It shows intent without causing damage. After a few months of this, both sides usually agree to negotiate." "What about actual fighting?" Dr. Thompson asked. "Fighting is very rare," Vexta explained. "If ships actually attack each other, it's considered a major tragedy. The last time Kalari ships fired on enemy vessels was over 100 years ago. 3 beings died, and both sides mourned for months." The humans looked at each other in amazement. Ben Murphy cleared his throat. "Ambassador, how many beings have died in this conflict with the Vorthek?" "No one has died," Zefki said. "That would be terrible. The Vorthek ships just sit near our trade routes and refuse to move. They send us messages saying the space belongs to them. And that's why you called it an invasion." Admiral Carter asked. 12 ships claiming territory seemed like a massive military action to us," Zefki admitted. Captain Rodriguez was shaking her head slowly. "Ambassador, I need to tell you something about human history. On our world, we've fought wars where millions of people died." The Kalari looked confused. "Millions? That's impossible. How could millions of beings fight each other?" "We've had single battles with more soldiers than your entire species has probably ever seen," Admiral Carter said. "Humans have been fighting major wars for thousands of years." Dr. Thompson pulled up a display showing Earth's military history. "This is just one war from our past," she said, showing images of World War II. "Over 70 million humans died in this conflict." The Kalari stared at the screen in horror. Zefki looked like he might be sick. 70 million deaths in one war? "And that wasn't even our worst war," Ben Murphy added. "We've had conflicts that destroyed entire continents." "This is why you have such powerful weapons," Vexta said, understanding beginning to show in his eyes. "Your species learned to fight on a scale we cannot imagine." "Exactly," Admiral Carter said. "When you sent us a message asking for military help against an overwhelming enemy force, we prepared for the kind of war we know how to fight." Dr. Thompson was typing notes quickly. "Ambassador, can you tell me about your homeworld? What kind of place did the Kalari evolve on?" "Kalari Prime is a peaceful world," Zefki said. "We have abundant resources, mild weather, and very few dangerous animals. Our ancestors rarely had to fight for survival." "That explains a lot," Dr. Thompson said. "Humans evolved on what we call a death world. Our planet tried to kill us constantly. We had to fight dangerous predators, survive natural disasters, and compete for limited resources. Everything on Earth wanted to eat us, poison us, or crush us," Captain Rodriguez added. "We learned to be warriors because we had to be." The Kalari were quiet for a long moment, trying to process this information. Finally, Zefki spoke. "So, when we asked for your help, we accidentally contacted a species of natural warriors. Warriors who brought enough firepower to conquer your entire sector of the galaxy, Admiral Carter confirmed. And you brought this force to help us with a minor trade dispute, Vexta said, sounding amazed. We thought your entire civilization was about to be destroyed, Ben Murphy explained. In human terms, that requires maximum response. Dr. Thompson looked up from her notes. This is fascinating from a cultural perspective. The Kalari live in what humans would consider paradise. They've never needed to develop serious military technology because they've never faced serious threats. Meanwhile, Admiral Carter added, humans have spent our entire history preparing for the worst possible scenarios, which explains why you responded to our request with such overwhelming force, Zethke said. We don't know how to do anything small, Captain Rodriguez admitted. When humans decide to fight, we fight to win completely. But you're not going to fight the Vorthik with your full power, are you? Vexta asked nervously. Admiral Carter smiled. Don't worry. We're not going to destroy them. But I think we need to have a conversation with this Vorthik species. What kind of conversation? Zethke asked. The kind where we explain that the Kalari are now under human protection, Ben Murphy said. I suspect the Vorthik will be very interested in negotiating once they understand the situation. Dr. Thompson looked thoughtful. This could actually be a good thing for this region of space. If word spreads that humans are willing to protect peaceful species, it might discourage aggressive behavior. You mean other species will be afraid to start conflicts because they might attract human attention? Vexta asked. Exactly, Admiral. Carter said. Sometimes the threat of overwhelming force is more effective than actually using it. Zethke sat back in his chair, looking exhausted. We asked for help with a small problem and accidentally started a new age of galactic politics. It happens, Captain Rodriguez said with a smile. But don't worry, humans are good at making friends. We just tend to make enemies disappear very quickly. What happens now? Zethke asked. Admiral Carter stood up. Now we go have a conversation with the Vorthik. I think once they meet us, your trade route problem will be solved permanently. And after that? Vexta asked. After that, the galaxy learns that Earth has joined the galactic community, Dr. Thompson said. And that we take our friendships very seriously. The meeting ended with the Kalari looking both relieved and terrified. They had solved their problem, but they had also learned that they lived in a much more dangerous universe than they had imagined. They had just discovered that not all species were as peaceful as they were, and the galaxy was about to discover that humans were very good at ending conflicts, even when they had to start by explaining what real conflict looked like. Commander Rick Davis watched the sensor display from the bridge of his destroyer, the U.S. Thunder. His ship was part of the response wing, 12 human vessels that had been chosen to deal with the Vorthik problem. Rick had been expecting a major battle, but now he was facing something much more complicated. Sir, we're approaching the Vorthik position, Lieutenant Janet Cole reported from her station. I count 15 alien ships, just like the Kalari said. Rick looked at the enemy vessels on his screen. They were small, maybe half the size of a human frigate. Their hull designs looked old and simple. After studying them for several minutes, Rick realized these ships would not last 5 minutes against even one human destroyer. What do you think, Commander? Major Helen Clark asked. She was the military strategist assigned to Rick's ship, and her job was to figure out how to win battles. Now she was trying to figure out how to win without completely destroying the enemy. I think we have a problem, Rick said. If we attack these ships with our normal weapons, there won't be anything left to negotiate with. Helen nodded. I've been thinking the same thing. Our main guns would vaporize their entire fleet in seconds. Sir, incoming message from Admiral Carter, the communications officer announced. Put him through, Rick ordered. Admiral Carter's face appeared on the screen. He looked serious but calm. Commander Davis, I want you to understand something clearly. We are not here to destroy the Vorthik. We're here to end this conflict in a way that protects the Kalari. Understood, sir. What are your orders? I want you to make contact with the Vorthik fleet. Let them know that the situation has changed. The Kalari now have human protection. And if they refuse to leave, Rick asked, then we show them why that would be a bad idea, the Admiral replied. But I want this done without killing anyone if possible. The communication ended, and Rick turned to Helen. Any ideas? What if we don't actually fight them? Helen suggested. What if we just show them what they would be fighting against? Rick thought about this. You mean demonstrate our capabilities without actually attacking? Exactly. Let them see what our weapons can do, then give them a chance to reconsider their position. That might work, Rick agreed. Janet, open a channel to the Vorthik fleet. The main screen changed to show the inside of an alien ship. The Vorthik looked similar to the Kalari, but with darker skin and more muscular builds. The alien on the screen wore what looked like military armor. I am Commander Thakmer of the Vorthak Defense Force, the alien said. His voice sounded confident and aggressive. You are in Vorthik territory. Leave now or face the consequences. Rick had dealt with hostile aliens in training simulations, but this was his first real contact with an unfriendly species. Commander Thakmer, I am Commander Rick Davis of the human fleet. The Kalari Federation has requested our protection. I'm here to inform you that this system is now under human oversight. Thakmer laughed, a harsh sound. Humans? We have never heard of your species. You have no authority here. Commander, how many ships do you have in this area? Rick asked. 15 warships, fully armed and ready for battle, Thakmer replied proudly. More than enough to deal with any force the Kalari could gather. And you consider 15 ships to be a significant military force? Of course, no species in this region could match our fleet. Rick looked at Helen, who nodded. It was time to educate the Vorthik about human military capabilities. Commander Thakmer, I want to show you something, Rick said. Janet, put our fleet formation on the external display. The screen split, showing both the Vorthak commander and a view of space around his position. Slowly, human ships began to appear on the display as they moved out of stealth mode. First came Rick's destroyer. Then another, then another. Thakmer's confident expression began to change as more and more human ships appeared. How many vessels do you have? He asked, his voice less certain now. In this immediate area, we have 12 destroyers, Rick replied calmly. But that's just the advance force. 12 ships is not enough to threaten us, Thakmer said, but he sounded less sure than before. Commander, each of my ships is larger than your entire fleet combined, Rick explained. And we have much more than 12 ships. On the screen, the massive shapes of human dreadnoughts began to appear in the distance. Each ship was over 2 miles long, bristling with weapons that could be seen even from far away. The Vorthik commander's face went pale as he realized the scale of what he was looking at. By the void, Thakmer whispered. How many ships do you have? Over 200 combat vessels, Rick replied. Plus support ships, troop transports, and fighter squadrons. The Vorthik commander was now staring at his own sensor displays, trying to count the human ships that kept appearing. This is impossible. No species has fleets that large. Commander Thakmer, would you like a demonstration of our capabilities? Helen asked, stepping into view of the camera. What kind of demonstration? Thakmer asked nervously. Helen pointed to a large asteroid floating nearby. Watch that rock. She nodded to Rick, who gave a quiet order to his weapons officer. One of the destroyer's smaller guns turned toward the asteroid and fired a single shot. The beam of energy struck the rock and completely vaporized it in a flash of light. That was our weakest weapon, Rick said calmly. Fired at minimum power. Thakmer stared at the empty space where the asteroid had been. You destroyed it completely. Commander, that gun could have hit any of your ships from twice this distance, Helen explained. And every human ship has dozens of weapons, much more powerful than that one. But why? Thakmer asked. Why do you have such terrible weapons? Because on our world, we learned that if you're going to fight, you fight to win, Rick replied. We don't believe in fair fights. We believe in overwhelming superiority. The Vorthak commander was quiet for a long moment, probably discussing the situation with his crew. When he spoke again, his aggressive tone was completely gone. Commander Davis, what do you want from us? We want you to leave Kalari space and return to your own territory, Rick said. The trade routes you've been blocking are now under human protection. And if we agree to leave, then this conversation ends peacefully and everyone goes home alive. And if we refuse? Rick looked directly at the camera. Commander, you have 15 small ships with weak weapons. We have over 200 warships designed for total warfare. What do you think would happen? Thekmar looked at his officers, then back at the screen. We need time to consider this. You have 1 hour, Helen said. After that, we'll assume you've chosen to fight. The communication ended, and Rick turned to his crew. Well, that went better than I expected. Sir, we're getting reports from the other human ships, Janet said. The Vorthak are sending messages to all their vessels. It looks like they're having a serious discussion. What do you think they'll decide? Helen asked. I think they'll leave, Rick said. They'd have to be completely insane to fight us after what they just saw. 30 minutes later, the Vorthak fleet began moving away from the Kaluri system. Commander Thakmer sent one final message to Rick. Commander Davis, the Vorthak Defense Force is withdrawing from this region. We will not return. Wise decision, Commander, Rick replied. Safe travels. As the Vorthak ships disappeared into hyperspace, Rick felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. The conflict was over without a single shot being fired in anger. But he had been expecting his first real space battle. Sir, message from Admiral Carter, Janet announced. Put him through. The Admiral appeared on screen, smiling. Outstanding work, Commander. You ended a months-long conflict in under an hour. Thank you, sir. The Vorthak were reasonable once they understood the situation. Most species are reasonable when faced with overwhelming force, the Admiral said. Now let's go tell the Kalari that their trade routes are safe. Rick looked out at the peaceful stars, wondering how many other conflicts in this region could be solved the same way. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the best way to keep peace was to show everyone what war with humans would actually look like. Captain Julie Martinez stood on the observation deck of the new human space station, watching ships come and go in the Kalari system. 3 months had passed since the Vorthak fleet had retreated, and everything had changed. The station called Friendship Base by the humans and the Great Shield by the Kalari was now the most important place in this part of the galaxy. Julie had been chosen to command the station because of her experience with diplomatic missions. Admiral Carter wanted someone who could handle the delicate job of representing humanity to dozens of alien species who were all suddenly very interested in meeting the newcomers. Captain, we have another delegation requesting a meeting, Lieutenant Dan Parker said as he approached. Dan was Julie's communications officer, and he had been very busy lately. Every day brought new alien species who wanted to talk to the humans. Which species this time? Julie asked. The Zorvani Republic. They're from the next sector over. They say they have a small problem with raiders, and were wondering if humans might be willing to help. Julie smiled. Let me guess. They heard about what happened with the Vorthak. Yes, ma'am. Word has spread pretty fast about how we solved the Kalari situation. Julie walked to her office where Dr. Karen Thompson was waiting with her daily report. Karen had stayed in the system to continue studying the local alien cultures, and her findings had been surprising. Good morning, Captain, Karen said. I have some interesting news to share. What did you discover today? Julie asked, sitting down at her desk. I've been tracking the effects of our presence in this region. Since the Vorthak incident, 17 different conflicts have been resolved through negotiation rather than fighting. 17? How is that possible? Corinne pulled up a display showing the local galactic map. It seems that just knowing humans are in the area has made everyone much more willing to talk instead of fight. No one wants to risk attracting our attention. Julie studied the map. Red dots showed where conflicts had been happening before the human fleet arrived. Most of the red dots had turned green, meaning the problems had been solved peacefully. This is remarkable, Julie said. We ended conflicts we didn't even know about. It gets better, Corinne continued. The Kalori have become the unofficial representatives for human interests in this region. Other species contact them first when they want to communicate with us. How is Ambassador Zethki handling that? He's been promoted to High Diplomatic Liaison. He seems to enjoy his new importance, though I think he's still a bit nervous about the responsibility. Julie laughed. I can understand that. Has there been any word from the Vorthak? Actually, yes. They sent a formal apology to the Kalori last week. They also offered to pay compensation for the trade disruption they caused. They didn't have to do that. No, but I think they want to make sure we know they're being cooperative. The last thing they want is for humans to think they're troublemakers. Julie's computer chimed with an incoming message. Captain Martinez, the voice said. This is Commander Jake Morrison on the U's Vengeance. Admiral Carter wants to speak with you. Put him through, Julie replied. Admiral Carter's face appeared on her screen. He looked tired but pleased. Captain Martinez, how are things at the station? Very busy, sir. We're getting contact requests from species all over this region. Everyone wants to establish diplomatic relations with humanity. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Earth Command has decided to make your station a permanent base for human operations in this sector. Julie felt excited and nervous at the same time. Permanent, sir? Yes, we're sending more ships and personnel to expand the facility. This region is going to be humanity's first major presence outside our home system. What about the Kalari? Sir, how do they feel about this? Admiral Carter smiled. They're thrilled. Ambassador Zefki told me yesterday that having humans as neighbors makes them feel safer than they've ever felt before. And the other species in the region? Most of them seem relieved. Apparently, this area has had low-level conflicts for decades. Now that humans are here, everyone is too worried about upsetting us to fight each other. After the Admiral ended the call, Julie walked back to the observation deck. She could see Kalari ships moving in formation with human patrol vessels, practicing joint operations. The sight would have been impossible to imagine just a few months ago. Lieutenant Parker joined her at the viewing window. Captain, I just received a strange message from a species called the Hegemony of Korth. They're asking if humans would be interested in joining something called the Galactic Peace Council. What's that? According to their message, it's an organization of species that work together to prevent major conflicts. They want to invite humanity to become a founding member of a new version that would have more authority. Julie thought about this. What kind of authority? They want to create a group that could intervene in conflicts before they become serious wars. They think having humans as members would make the organization much more effective. Because other species would be afraid to ignore us? Exactly. They're basically asking us to be the galaxy's police force. Dr. Thompson approached them, overhearing the conversation. That's fascinating from an anthropological perspective. These species have realized that humans represent a new kind of power in the galaxy. What do you mean? Julie asked. Most galactic conflicts in this region have been small-scale affairs like the Kalari situation. But now there's a species present that could end any conflict completely and immediately. That changes the entire balance of power, Julie nodded slowly. So other species are more willing to compromise because they know we could force a solution. If we wanted to. Right. And they'd rather negotiate with each other than have humans decide the outcome for them. Lieutenant Parker checked his computer. Captain, I'm getting reports from our patrol ships. They say that trade has increased dramatically throughout the region. Ships that used to avoid certain areas because of pirates or raiders are now flying those routes freely. Because they know human patrols are in the area, Julie realized. Yes, ma'am. And the pirates and raiders have either disappeared or requested permission to become legitimate traders. Dr. Thompson was taking notes rapidly. This is unprecedented. A single species has accidentally created a zone of peace covering multiple star systems simply by being present. Accidentally is right, Julie said. We came here to help with one small problem and ended up reshaping the local political structure. Captain, Lieutenant Parker said, there's something else. The Kalari want to hold a ceremony next week to officially thank humanity for our help. They're inviting representatives from dozens of species. What kind of ceremony? They want to declare a new galactic calendar, starting from the day the human fleet arrived in their system. They're calling it the beginning of the peace era. Julie stared out at the busy space around the station. Ships from a dozen different species moved peacefully among each other, trading, talking, and working together. The Kalari system had become a hub of diplomatic and commercial activity. Dr. Thompson, Julie said, in your professional opinion, what do you think the long-term effects of this will be? Karen thought for a moment. I think humanity has accidentally started something much bigger than we intended. We came here to help one species with a small problem, but we've shown the entire region what real peace looks like. You mean peace through strength? More than that. We've shown them that conflicts don't have to drag on for months or years. Problems can be solved quickly and permanently if someone has the will and the power to solve them. Julie watched a group of Kalari and human engineers working together to expand the station's docking facilities. So what happens next? I think the galaxy is going to discover that humans are very good at making friends, Karen said. And that once we consider someone a friend, we take their safety very seriously. The age of small conflicts might be over. In this region, Lieutenant Parker added. Who's going to start a fight when they know it might bring human attention? Julie smiled as she watched the peaceful activity around the station. The Kalari had sent the wrong signal, asking for help. They didn't really need on a scale they couldn't imagine. But maybe it had been exactly the right signal after all. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as the species that other species called when they needed problems solved permanently. And sometimes, the best way to keep the peace was to make sure everyone knew what would happen if the peace was broken.